I'm Audrey, 29 years old, living in Austin, Texas. I manage an independent bookstore, a job that's far from flashy but one I take pride in every time I close the books at the end of the week. And for the past 2 years, I was in love with someone named Chase. A man I once thought would be my safe harbor after so many storms. We met at a small gathering at a mutual friend's house. Chase stood by the bar and smiled like he'd known me for years. He worked in digital media. Always busy, always full of stories about big clients, deadlines, and strategy. I used to think, I'm so lucky to be loved by someone so smart and ambitious. At first, it was so sweet I felt like I was living inside a Norah Jones song. On weekends, he'd drive me out to coffee spots outside the city, hold me when I was drained after a long day. He once made me his first lasagna, though I ended up sipping Pepto-Bismol at midnight because it was way too salty. Still, I laughed, because that was Chase. The man. Then things started to change. Casual remarks, comments that seemed harmless, until they weren't. Are you sure that dress looks okay on you? I'm just being honest. You should try a different hairstyle. This one makes your face look rounder. Most people your age already know what they're doing. Every time, I told myself, he's just being blunt, don't overreact. I believed mature relationships required honesty, even when it stung. Chase never told outright lies, but he had a gift for turning the truth into something sharp-edged. I started noticing he never invited me to work events. He always said, that environment's not right for someone outside the industry. And truthfully, I didn't mind. I didn't need to impress anyone. But a part of me still wished he would acknowledge me the way I always proudly stood by him. Then, on a Friday, he sent me a text. Dinner with my agency group tomorrow. You're coming, dress smart. I reread that line at least 10 times. In 2 years, it was the first time he'd ever invited me to a work night out. I smiled like a kid and booked a nail appointment instantly. That night, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my new olive dress from Nordstrom, soft curls framing my face, nude pink lips, just the way Chase liked. I didn't dress to impress his friends. I dressed so he would look at me and think, she belongs here. I arrived at the restaurant at 6:10, just 5 minutes late due to traffic. Chase was already seated with 3 people, 2 men, 1 woman. He glanced up, eyes flicking past me like I was a server. You finally made it, he muttered. No hug, no smile. I sat down, carefully placing my bag beside me, trying to ease the tension with a light joke. Was there a dress code I missed? I was afraid I might have overdressed. Chase gave me a slow once-over and said flatly, So, you chose that dress? I heard a knife clink against a plate. The woman looked away and the 2 guys stifled a laugh. I bit my lip, resting my hand on my lap to steady myself. I had waited 2 years for this invitation, to finally be seen beside him in public, but in that moment it hit me. I wasn't invited to be respected. I was invited to be compared. The atmosphere at Allura, a restaurant where most guests ordered truffle pasta just to post it on Instagram, turned ice cold around our table. Chase had morphed into someone I barely recognized. He now only focused on Bryce, the loud blonde with arched brows, and Mitchell, the lanky one with black-rimmed glasses. They were classic agency types, crisp white shirts and endless stories about 6-figure deals. And me? I was the unnecessary extra. Chase went on and on about his upcoming campaign, how he secured a $12,000 budget for a single TikTok, and how hard he had to fight to win over the client. I didn't try to jump in, not because I had nothing to say, but because every time I opened my mouth, he cut me off. When Mitchell asked what I did, I smiled and said, I manage a small bookstore on South Congress. We also run a weekly book club. Chase chuckled, didn't even look at me. Instead, he turned to Bryce. She's great at organizing rainbow-colored book displays. All 3 of them laughed. Not loudly, not cruelly, just enough to make my face burn like I'd been slapped. I set my water glass down, clutched my napkin. I'm a manager too, I said slowly, just in a different setting. Chase smirked. Well, everyone has their own definition of that word. I turned away so no one would see my eyes glisten. I once believed Chase respected my independence. that even if my job didn't sparkle, it had worth. But tonight it was clear he didn't think so. The entrees arrived, beef tartare for Chase, steamed salmon for me, but no one really touched their food. I pushed mine around my plate. Chase kept talking about a meeting with a very difficult Italian creative director, and how his handling of it made his boss nod in admiration. I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't recognize the man across from me. When the server brought the check, Chase grabbed it first. He glanced at it, and then slid it across the table toward me. "I'm taking care of that," he said casually, as if I were his assistant, not his girlfriend of 2 years. I thought I misheard. I waited for a grin, a wink, something to break the strange tension, but nothing came. Before I could speak, he said, louder, "Actually, I've been meaning to talk to you about this. Tonight's a good time since we have friends here." I turned to look at him. "I don't think we're right for each other anymore. I don't feel attracted to you the way I used to, and I'm tired of forcing this relationship. We should end it." My heart skipped a beat. I tried to smile, but my lips trembled. "Are you serious?" Chase stood up, draped his blazer over his shoulder. "A girl like you should be grateful I even chose you." It felt like the entire restaurant fell silent for a few seconds. Bryce and Mitchell quickly stood up, avoiding eye contact. The three of them walked out, leaving me, my olive dress, and a bill just under $360. Most of it wine I didn't even touch. The waiter approached, giving me a sympathetic glance. I nodded, pulling out a credit card that had already been maxed out since last month. I don't remember how I signed the receipt or how I managed to walk out of that restaurant without breaking down. I sat in my car for nearly 20 minutes, engine off, just staring at the sidewalk bathed in yellow streetlight, asking myself, how could someone who once claimed to love me humiliate me like that? I got home close to 11 p.m., each step in heels a stab of pain. But it was Chase's final words that hurt more. "A girl like you should be grateful." I collapsed onto the couch, mascara smudged from tears, a cold glass of water shaking in my hand. My mind could only circle one question. Who was that person? I opened my phone and scrolled through old messages with Chase. Goodnight texts. Photos from our trips. Those times he said, "I'm working on strategy for a new client." What once felt like love now looked like a disjointed string of half-truths. I called Emelina, my best friend and someone who had known Chase back in college at UT Austin. When I gave her a rough summary of the night, there was silence on the line before she finally said, "Are you sitting down?" I froze. "You know something, don't you?" Emily sighed. "Audrey, do you remember when we ran into Chase at the alumni mixer last year? I told you he didn't seem like he was doing what he claimed, and I wasn't the only one who thought that." I held my breath. "What do you mean?" Emily explained. Within their college circle, many people said Chase had always exaggerated about his work, even back then. He once claimed to intern at a prestigious ad agency, but in truth he was just doing subtitle work for YouTube videos. "And recently," she continued, "I overheard a friend named Kevin who works at the same company as Chase, talking about a guy who's always missing deadlines but constantly bragging on LinkedIn. I asked for the name and guess who?" I barely needed to guess. Chase? Bingo. I sat quietly. In my mind, the carefully constructed house of memories began collapsing in silence. All those late nights Chase said he was in meetings. All the times he claimed he had dinner with clients from LL. The polished office photos on Instagram. Stock images. Emily added, "If you want to double check, I can text Kevin. He's nice, won't mind." Agreed, even though part of me still couldn't believe things had unraveled this far. Not long after, I got a message from an unknown number. "Hi Audrey, this is Kevin, Chase's coworker. Emily said it was important, happy to answer anything." My heart pounded as I typed the first question. "Is Chase really a senior account manager at your company?" Kevin replied faster than I expected. "Senior what?" "Chase is an assistant project coordinator. He doesn't manage clients, he assists with admin, schedules meetings and takes notes." I bit my lip, then asked, "What about the campaigns he says he's leading, or international business trips?" Kevin's next message sent a chill down my spine. "Audrey, Chase hasn't left the state since joining. The presentations he said he led, he just made the PowerPoint slides. He wasn't even one of the speakers. Everything was a lie, not just to me, but to everyone. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window, hugging a pillow, eyes fixed on the dark. His once harmless comments echoed like blades. You should try something more practical. Maybe you just don't get how big campaigns work. People in my field are busy in a different way. It wasn't that I wasn't good enough, it was that he wasn't real. Around 4 a.m., I jumped out of bed, opened my laptop and started digging. I reviewed every message, every photo he sent. The day he claimed he was at a meeting in Chicago, I found a selfie he took in my own living room. The background showed a pillow I crocheted. The company HQ photo, pulled straight from their website. Identical, pixel for pixel. I had no more tears left. But I knew one thing, if the truth had come out, I wasn't going to let it go to waste. The next morning, just as I was sipping cold coffee, a text from Chase popped up unexpectedly. You're still coming to the birthday dinner, right? My mom's really looking forward to seeing you. Make sure you wear something cute. We have big news to share. I stared at the screen. My heart no longer raced from emotion. It clenched from a mix of rage and disbelief. Big news? With whom? With the person he abandoned at a restaurant like she didn't exist? Clearly, Chase was still putting on his perfect performance for his family, pretending we were the ideal couple. Maybe he needed me to show up just a little longer to keep the mask intact. And maybe I'd help him keep that illusion, just long enough to tear it down from the inside. I called Emily and told her everything. She was quiet for a few seconds, then said, just one thing. You want to expose him at the party? I'm coming with you. We met at a coffee shop down the street. Emily brought her laptop and I came with a thick stack of notes covered in evidence. We started planning like two seasoned strategy analysts. I went through all my messages with Chase. Those times he said he had to travel to Denver but checked in at a local gym instead. His stories constantly contradicted. One day he was meeting a creative director, the next he said he worked independently. I opened our photo albums and cross-referenced the pictures Chase had posted on social media. Half of them were pulled straight from the company website. Emily looked up. Did you see that photo of Chase sitting in the office with a nameplate that says Creative Director? I nodded. She flipped her laptop screen and reopened the link I'd flagged before. Here, she pointed to the original image on the company homepage. That's Chase's actual boss. He pasted his face over someone else's. I laughed quietly, more in disbelief than humor. The man I trusted had turned his whole life into a staged production. 2 days before the party, I decided to text Ethan, Chase's cousin, someone I'd chatted with a few times during Thanksgiving last year. I didn't say much, just casually asked if the family knew anything about Chase's work. Ethan replied almost instantly. His mom's been telling relatives Chase is about to become a VP of marketing. His dad says he's planning to propose to you soon. There's extended family coming in from Dallas for the party. I closed the phone and swallowed the surge of frustration rising in my chest. This wasn't just lying. Chase was constructing an entirely fake life. And he was dragging me into it as a prop. I knew I couldn't walk into that party empty-handed. That evening, Emily came over with a USB drive. She had pulled chat transcripts, screenshots from Chase's LinkedIn profile, and most importantly, a voice recording from Kevin stating clearly, Chase is just an assistant. He doesn't lead any campaigns and has been formally warned twice for taking credit for others' work. We also prepared printed copies, just in case his family didn't believe me. Every piece of evidence was dated, sourced, and undeniable. As I debated whether to bring the USB or just the physical file, Emily looked at me and said, You don't have to explode at the party. Just let the truth speak for itself. Sometimes, when told calmly, the truth is what breaks people the fastest. The day before the birthday party, Chase texted again. My parents can't wait to see you. Everyone still thinks we're the perfect couple. Don't do anything you'll regret. Stared at the last part, you'll regret. No, Chase, I don't regret anything. I only look forward to seeing your face when you realize your performance is over. Saturday afternoon. I stood in front of the mirror wearing a simple black dress, the one Chase once called plain, and reapplied my lipstick, hands slightly trembling. Emily gave my shoulder a gentle squeeze, her eyes sharp with purpose. "You don't need to say much," she said. "Let the truth do the talking." I arrived at Chase's house at exactly 6:15. It was in the northern suburbs of Austin, the place I had visited a few times for holidays. Warm yellow light spilled from the windows, and the smell of grilled meat and apple pie floated through the air. Chase's 31st birthday party. Everyone was there. The door opened and Mrs. Lorraine, Chase's mother, pulled me into a warm hug like I was still the perfect girlfriend she had always adored. "We've been so excited to see you. Chase said you two have something special to share, right?" I smiled. "Yes, just a little something." I walked into the living room, every eye turning toward me. Chase stood in the center of the crowd in a white shirt and navy blazer. He froze when he saw me, but quickly recovered, flashing that familiar smile as if nothing was wrong. "I knew you'd come," he whispered, stepping closer. "Just don't make a scene, okay?" I responded with a polite smile. "It's just a family gathering, right?" Laughter echoed through the room. Glasses clinked. Chase returned to his confident self, launching into his performance. He chatted with Uncle Tom and Aunt Becky about his upcoming promotion to senior marketing strategist next quarter. With another cousin, he bragged about business trips to Chicago and New York. Everyone nodded in admiration. Chase painted a glowing picture of his future, as if he were talking about someone else entirely. I stayed silent, waiting for the perfect moment. And then the doorbell rang. The room paused. Mrs. Lorraine went to answer it. Her voice carried back in surprise. "Oh, hello, dear. Kevin, is that you?" Kevin, Chase's former coworker, the one I contacted through Emily, walked in wearing a crisp shirt, holding a small folder in his hands. Chase froze. I stepped forward, deliberately raising my voice so the entire room could hear. "Chase, didn't you say there'd be big news tonight? Or maybe Kevin should help you share it instead?" A hush swept through the room like a wave. Chase gave a forced smile. "This isn't the time. What are you doing?" Kevin looked around, gave a polite nod to everyone, then said, "Sorry to interrupt the party, but considering some of the things Chase has been saying lately, I think it's time for a few clarifications." Chase lowered his wine glass, his expression shifting from defensive to panicked. Kevin opened a folder in his hands and pulled out a stamped employment verification letter. Chase is not a director. He's not a team lead. His official title is Project Coordinator Assistant, and he's never led any major campaign despite what he's claimed. A small gasp came from Aunt Becky. Kevin continued. In fact, Chase is currently in his final probationary period after being warned 3 times for inflating accomplishments and taking credit for others' work. Chase lunged forward to grab the documents, but he was too late. I held up a printed photo. The office picture Chase once posted where he had photoshopped his own face over his boss's. "I can show everyone the original photo from the company website," I said. "And dozens of messages from the past 2 years full of contradictions and lies." Mrs. Loren turned pale. Mr. David, Chase's father, quietly set down his wine glass. I took a deep breath and continued, my voice firm but calm. "I once trusted and loved this man, until the night he invited me to dinner with his friends, publicly humiliated me, broke up with me on the spot, and left me with a bill of over $300 at a high-end restaurant." No one spoke. The entire room was weighed down by silence. Chase flushed red and stepped forward, shouting, "You're making this up. You're performing in front of my family." I didn't answer. I just looked him in the eyes, without anger, without yelling. Kevin placed another copy of the documents on the table and nodded toward me. "Everything's in here. Anyone can verify it." I pulled out my phone and played a voice memo, a recording of Chase bragging that he was chosen to present in place of his boss on a major project. Kevin listened for a few seconds, then confirmed. "That clip's from a team meeting, and the person presenting was our boss. Chase was just advancing the PowerPoint slides." Chase stood frozen, jaw clenched. His eyes darted around the room. No one stepped in to defend him. At last, Mr. David spoke. "We need to have a conversation. Not now, but tonight." Mrs. Lorraine just looked at me, her eyes glistening. As for me, I felt still inside, not smug, not victorious, just like a truth had finally come to light, one that should have been seen long ago. The dining room turned cold, as if someone had dropped a block of ice onto the table. Chase stood there, fists clenched, eyes scanning the room, searching for an ounce of support, but found none. Even his mother, Mrs. Lorraine, sat silent, wringing her napkin in her lap. After a long pause, as if he couldn't bear the silence anymore, Chase snapped. "You planned this, didn't you? You've always been jealous of my career, and now this is your way of tearing me down." I said nothing. I just looked at him, the same man who once claimed he'd protect me from everything, now blaming me to cover his own collapse. "I have nothing to be ashamed of," he barked. "Maybe I exaggerated a little. Everyone does that. What about you, Audrey? What's so impressive about your tiny little bookstore that gives you the right to look down on me?" The room shifted. No longer surprise, disappointment was now painted on every face. Mr. David looked up, voice raspy. "Do you even realize what you've just done, Chase?" Chase turned, ready to argue, but Mrs. Lorraine cut in before he could speak. "You didn't just lie to your girlfriend," she said, voice trembling. "You lied to your entire family." She shook her head. "I used to believe you were someone responsible. But today, I don't know who you are." Chase let out a bitter laugh, clinging to the last shred of pride. "Of course. So now everyone's on her side?" Ethan, Chase's cousin who had been silent the whole time, finally spoke. "No one's on any side, we just want to know which parts of your story were actually true." Chase stayed silent, not out of guilt, but because there was simply nothing left to defend. He turned to me, eyes full of rage. "Do you ever stop to think about why I had to make all this up? If you hadn't always expected so much from me, I wouldn't have needed to hide anything." I finally spoke, calm and clear. "Chase, I never asked you to be anyone else. I just wanted you to be real, and you couldn't do that." Chase shoved his chair back, the legs screeching across the tile floor. "That's enough. I don't need to sit here for this." He stormed through the living room and slammed the front door so hard a small picture frame on the wall tilted sideways. The room fell silent again. Mrs. Lorraine stood up, eyes red, and quietly made her way to the kitchen. She didn't say anything to me, but as she passed, she gently squeezed my hand. And that was enough to warm my heart. A few minutes later, she returned, holding the birthday cake. I could still see the frosting letters, "Happy Birthday, Chase." There was a pause. No one knew what to do with the cake meant for the man who had just stormed out after a meltdown. But then Dina, Lorraine's cousin, gave a small laugh. "Well, we already baked it, might as well eat it, right?" Soft chuckles began to ripple around the table. Mr. David nodded slowly and said, "We can't change what just happened, but at the very least, we can sit down and face it." And so everyone sat back down. Me, the person who had just laid bare a brutal truth, should have felt empty, out of place, but I didn't. Mrs. Lorraine offered me the first slice of cake. Kevin raised his glass toward me. Ethan poured me a cup of hot tea, and everyone welcomed me back to the table like I had never been pushed out of the party. I ate that first bite in silence. It didn't taste as sweet as I remembered from last year, but it tasted honest, unpolished, without pretending to be anything else. After the party, I helped Mrs. Lorraine with the dishes in the kitchen. She turned to me, her voice soft but firm. "Thank you for not staying silent." I squeezed her hand gently and smiled. "Thank you for being willing to see the truth." The next morning, I still felt the strange afterglow of emotions from the night before. Part relief, part confusion. I didn't know what I expected after everything, but it definitely wasn't 13 missed calls from unknown numbers. I glanced at my phone, 1 call from Mrs. Lorraine, 1 from Ethan, 2 from Kevin, and 5 from a number I knew all too well, Chase. I opened the voicemail inbox. The first voice was Mrs. Lorraine's, trembling. "Sweetheart, please call me back. Chase, he lost control last night. I'm sorry if he bothered you. Please just let me know you're safe." I gripped my phone tighter. The next message was from Kevin, urgent. "Hey Audrey, Chase posted your home address online. I just saw it in a shared Facebook group we use at work. I already reported it to the admin and took a screenshot. You should let your building manager know immediately." A chill ran down my spine. It wasn't Chase's anger that scared me. I was used to how quickly he could pivot from charismatic professional to blame anyone but himself. But posting my home address online, that was a line I could not allow him to cross. I called building management immediately. Within minutes, they stationed someone at the front desk and updated the list of banned visitors. I locked my doors, pulled the curtains shut, and set my phone to silent. But my mind? It wouldn't rest. By late morning, the doorbell rang. I peeked through the peephole and saw two people I hadn't expected, Mrs. Lorraine and Ethan. I opened the door. She hugged me instantly, a silent apology. Ethan held a brown paper bag. Cinnamon rolls from my favorite bakery. I invited them in. We sat at my tiny dining table, the one with the wobbly leg I still hadn't fixed since last month. Chase drank a lot after storming out of the party, Mrs. Lorraine began, her voice hoarse. He came home totally out of control, broke things, shouted, then stormed off again. I thought he went to meet friends, but I had no idea he went to your place. I sat still. He actually came here? Ethan nodded. The building manager stopped him. But Chase caused a major scene downstairs. He was yelling awful things about you, even saying he was going to expose the truth. Security had to threaten to call the police before he finally left. I wrapped my hands tightly around my teacup. Mel also posted my address. Kevin sent me a screenshot. Mrs. Lorraine covered her face. Oh, God. I don't even know how many times I should apologize. Chase is no longer the son I thought. I raised. I didn't respond. I simply looked at the two people sitting across from me, who had no reason to apologize but still chose to show up, bringing kindness instead of denial. Ethan pulled out his phone and opened a text thread. You should know this, Audrey. Chase has done something similar before, back in college. I furrowed my brow. Similar how? Diner. He made up a story that he was a research assistant for a marketing professor, bragged to his friends, even printed fake business cards. When the truth came out, he transferred schools just to avoid facing it. I sat still. The picture of who Chase really was became clearer. A long chain of facades, each thicker than the last, to hide an aching void inside. Since he was little, Mrs. Lorraine whispered, he always compared himself to others. I thought, praising him would build his confidence. But maybe I was wrong. No one said anything for a moment, just the soft clink of a spoon against porcelain and the scent of cinnamon rolls drifting quietly through the small kitchen. I looked at Mrs. Lorraine. I don't blame you. Or Ethan. But if he keeps going like this, there might come a time when there's no one left to help him. Ethan nodded. We understand. And this time, our family's done covering for him. Before they left, Mrs. Lorraine hugged me one more time. Thank you. For speaking up. 3 weeks after the night Chase caused a scene outside my apartment, I received a message from Kevin. He was officially let go today. There's no coming back. I stared at the text on my screen, not with anger or satisfaction, just relief. Like a final door had quietly closed behind me, sealing off everything I no longer needed to carry. According to Ethan, Chase had left Austin and moved in temporarily with his uncle in Tucson, Arizona, after being terminated for unethical conduct and damaging the team's reputation. The future director title he clung to collapsed with no fanfare, because it was never real to begin with. But less than a week later, I started receiving messages from strange Instagram accounts. No photos, no names. The words were all too familiar. I know you still think about me. You ruined everything. Happy now? Audrey, if you don't respond, I'll come again. I blocked each account coldly, without hesitation. Chase still refused to let go of the illusion he built. But I wasn't the same woman he left behind. I changed all my passwords, installed extra security cameras at my door, and notified building management to permanently update their banned list. But what gave me the most peace was knowing I wasn't alone anymore. Kayla, Chase's cousin, had become my regular Saturday coffee friend. She had that sharp-edged honesty of someone who never believed his stories in the first place, paired with a warm heart that made her company feel effortless. We'd sit in our favorite bakery, order cinnamon rolls like the ones her mom once brought, and talk about everything except Chase. As for Kevin? Since that birthday party, we'd grabbed lunch a few times, sometimes dinner. Not dating, neither of us rushed. But there was something calm about the way he asked, "You doing okay today?" without needing a long answer. We shared dumb memes, debated punctuation placement in emails, and sometimes sat in silence that didn't feel awkward at all. I returned to my job at the bookstore and even started taking some evening writing classes, something I'd put off for too long while chasing after someone who never thought I was enough. I also rearranged my apartment. That old sofa, where I once cried after the restaurant disaster, was replaced with a beige armchair I'd always loved but never dared to buy. The framed photo of Galveston Beach Chase once gave me came down, replaced by a cork map filled with tiny stickers. Places I want to visit, alone, or with someone who truly deserves to go with me. One night, while making tea, my phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. "You doing okay? I heard Chase just came back to Texas, but according to Mom, this time it's for treatment." I set the phone down. I didn't respond right away. I wasn't sure how I felt. Maybe indifferent. Maybe quietly relieved. Maybe hopeful for him. But not because I still cared. Because everyone deserves a chance to change, if they truly want it. But me? I had already moved forward. That night, with spring air drifting through my window and the smell of old books still clinging to my sleeves, I sat down to write the first lines of my short story. About a girl who once thought she was small in someone else's eyes, until she realized she never needed their gaze to grow. I looked back on everything. 2 years with Chase. The self-doubt. The lonely nights that felt unbearable. And I smiled. Because I knew I had left that toxic relationship before I lost myself completely. Don't regret it. I don't resent him. I'm just grateful. Because sometimes the people who hurt you the most end up being the very door that leads you to freedom. Audrey's story is a powerful reminder that people don't always leave because you're not enough. They leave because they can't handle the truth once you finally see them for who they are. In a world full of polished illusions, staying true to your values and speaking the truth is the greatest form of self-protection. Walking away from a toxic relationship is not failure. It's the beginning of freedom, growth, and a life built on authenticity. What do you think about Audrey's journey? Have you ever experienced something similar? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about life, love, and family.